We are moving towards the apex of the consumer theory, which is the demand curve. And we are about to start studying the effects of Px on X, that is, the effects of a good's own price on its demand. So you're going to keep preferences, incomes, price of other goods all constant, and we are going to change Px and see how that affects X. We all know the law of demand. When the price of a good goes up, the demand goes down. And when the price of a good goes down, the demand goes up. And that's why the demand curve has a negative slope. Negative sloped demand curve due to the law of demand. And everybody was happy with that until Sir Robert Giffen in the 1800s observed that certain goods did not obey the law of demand. Basically, when the price would go up, the demand will actually go up, and if the price would go down, the demand would actually go down. But that's the opposite of the law of demand. And it implies a very, very weird positive sloped demand curve. And he was very puzzled. And he was like, how is that possible? And he wrote a book. The book became very famous. Even Marshall, which is one of the main economists that developed the theory of microeconomics, started paying attention to him. What are some of Sir Giffen's examples? Well, the most famous one, it's kind of a legend by now, nobody knows if it's really true, is the one about potatoes during the Irish famine. Basically, the idea is, when the price of potato would go up during the famine, the demand for potato would go up. And when the price would go down, the demand would go down. A more common example is the consumption of rice among the poorest Asian population. There's also evidence that this demand doesn't obey the law of demand in certain circumstances. What's going on? Well, the theory that explains that is actually complicated. So let me start by giving you the intuition. Remember what real income is. We learned that in macroeconomics. Real income is income divided by price index. A price index is some sort of average among prices. It can be the arithmetic average. More often it is the geometric average, but it's some sort of price average. Now consider the following. Let's say that your income doesn't change, your paycheck doesn't change, but the price of gasoline or your rent goes down. Do you realize that your real income went up? Real income represents purchasing power. It's how much your income can accomplish in terms of purchasing goods. If your nominal income is the same, however, the price of something that you spend a lot of money on goes down, you got richer, even having the same paycheck. So that was what presumably was going on in Ireland. The people were very hungry. It was a very tough time, and they were eating a lot of potatoes. When the price of potato would fall, the price index, which is the average price, would fall. The price index will include the price of potato, the price of water, and etc. But potato was a very big chunk of their budget, so it was a very important element in the price index. So when the price of potato would go down, the price index would significantly go down, and the real income would significantly go up because the price index is the denominator. Think about it. You spend a lot of your money in potatoes. The potatoes got cheaper. You got richer, even though your income is the same. But here's the thing. They were so tired of potatoes that when the price of potato went down and they got a little bit richer because the real income went up, they bought something else, not potatoes. They actually bought less potatoes because they were so tired of potatoes, because they were in a situation so extreme. Let's see the opposite example now. Let's assume that the price of potatoes goes up. In that case, your purchasing power, your real income really goes down. But your budget is already so strained because the famine in Irish was so severe that you end up buying less meat and more potatoes. So do you see the intuition that's going on? We have a given good only when you have extreme situations. We have a given good only when people are really, really hungry or are really, really going through a tough time. And the mechanism is the change in real income. Basically, a change in the price of the good affects the real income by changing the price index, and in the opposite direction. When the price index goes up, real income goes down. When price goes down, real income goes up. As I change real income, do I use my extra purchasing power to be more of the good or less? And how are we going to model this? How are we going to be able to identify the causes of a given good? Well, for every change in price, and I'm talking about the price of the good itself, we are going to decompose the change in demand between substitution effect and income effect. The substitution effect is the change in consumption due to a change in price holding real income or utility constant. So basically, you're going to change prices, but then you're going to artificially, in an imaginary construct, we're going to change income as well, so that the price change does not change real income. We're going to keep real income constant. Well, in reality, we are going to keep utility constant. And keeping real income constant and keeping utility constant is not exactly the same thing, but it's close. So we are going to keep utility constant, but keep in mind that keeping utility constant is similar or almost the same keeping real income constant. So again, I'm going to change prices. I know that that's going to change real income. What I do is that I artificially, in my imagination, am going to change nominal income as well, so that this change in nominal income compensates for my change in prices. In the substitution effect, I'm trying to capture the following. I am not trying to capture the effect caused by the change in my real income. I'm trying to capture the substitution effect. That is, if Diet Coke is more expensive, I'm going to drink more Diet Pepsi. I'm going to substitute away from the now more expensive good to the cheaper good. That's what I'm trying to capture. And then we're going to have the income effect. The effect on consumption due to a change in real income caused by a change in price. So let's try to see that in an example. Consider an initial budget. Here's my initial budget constraint. Here's my initial consumption of Y. Here's my initial consumption of X. Okay, now there is a decrease in the price of X. That's what you're talking about here, a change in a good's price. When you have a change in the price of good X, how is that going to affect the budget constraint? Well, it's not going to affect the y-intercept. Why? Because this point here presumes that I'm consuming only y, x equals 0. So if I'm spending all my income on y and the price of x change, how many units of y can I afford? The same. On the other hand, what's going to happen to my x-intercept? It's going to pivot out. Why? Because now that x is cheaper, if I am spending all my money on x, I'll be able to afford more x. So that's why my x-intercept is here, and that is my new budget constraint. And here's my new demand. Let's call it x double star and y double star. Okay. How am I going to decompose this change in demand here? This is the change in demand I want to decompose. Such as I can isolate the two effects, the income effect and the substitution effect. I want to isolate the effect on my real income, or I want to net out from the substitution effect the effect on real income. How am I going to do that? Well, consider my new budget. It's this red line here. How do I give or take away income such as I am compensating for my change in real income so I can net it out? Well, when price went down, real income went up, right? When PX went down, real income went up. To compensate, to take that effect away, I'm gonna take, in my imagination, income from this consumer until he is able to afford only his previous level of utility. So here it is. Notice the difference between the blue budget and the red budget. First of all, they represent the same price ratio, but a smaller income. How do I know that? Because those two are parallels. So the price ratio, which is the slope, remember the slope of the budget constraint is the price ratio. The price ratio didn't change. They are parallel, they have the same slope. But now, to compensate for my larger real income caused by the reduction in prices, I took away part of the nominal income. If you look at the definition again, price index went down because PX went down. Then I took away income to compensate, such as to keep real income constant. Again, I actually changed my income so that the consumer can afford the same level of utility. But look at my demand now. The demand is where it's tangent to my previous indifference curve. It is tangent in a different point because I'm keeping the slope of my new budget. Therefore, the optimal demand will be in a new point, and I'm going to call it XB. Okay, so here we have, from my original bundle to my XB, that's my substitution effect. Why? Because I netted away, I took away the income effect. There was a change in prices, but then I changed income to keep my level of utility or my real income the same. Therefore, I netted away my income effect. This change in consumption is only the substitution effect, meaning Diet Coke is cheaper. I consume less Diet Pepsi and more Diet Coke. I substituted towards Diet Coke because now it's cheaper relative to the other goods. That's my substitution effect. And the rest, from XB to X double star, which is my final demand, I have my income effect. The effect caused just by the change in real income, not caused by the substitution between or among goods. So let's make a summary of the steps. Call the original amount of good 1 X star and the final amount of good 2 X double star. Here I am. That's the first one. That's the second one. Note if the price of the good went up and down. It went down because my budget constraint changed it this way. You can say that a decrease in the price of X will cause the budget constraint to pivot out, and that is what happened here. Step 3. Change income, which is a parallel shift to the new budget constraint, to compensate change in real income. Budget constraint shifts should as it is tangent to the old indifference curve. Here we go. Here's my new budget constraint. It is parallel to my new budget because that's just a change in nominal income. As we saw in class exercise 1, it changed the intercept, but it doesn't change the slope, so it's parallel. But now I took away income to compensate, such as I'm able to afford only the previous level of utility. Therefore, I'm keeping my utility constant, just changing the price ratio, just changing the slope. See the demand with this new artificial budget? Call it XB. The substitution effect is from X star to XB, and the income effect is from XB to X double star. Here we are, substitution effect, income effect. Now, notice that both the substitution effect and the income effect in this example are positive. From X star to XB, there's a positive change. From XB to X double star, that's also a positive change. This is actually significant. Let's talk about that. First, note the direction of the substitution effect. When price of PX went down, the consumption of X caused by the substitution effect went up from X star to XB. So when price went down, the consumption caused by the substitution effect, which is from X star to XB, went up. This is always going to be the case. The substitution effect is always negative in the sense that when price goes down, consumption goes up. When price goes up, consumption goes down. It's always the case. I never substitute towards a more expensive good. I substitute away from a more expensive good, and I substitute towards a cheaper good. So here's the hint. When the price goes down, XB is always going to be larger than X star. And when you increase price, XB is always going to be larger than X star. The effect is always opposite. It's the income effect that's more complicated. In our example, the income effect was also positive. Why? Because, I'm copy and pasting the definition here again. When the price of X went down, the real income went up. If the denominator is reduced, the ratio increases. When real income went up, I purchased more of X. I got a little bit richer and I purchased more of X. That can be seen because the income effect is positive from XB to X double star. That is only the case when the good is normal. So when the good is normal, when you reduce price, increasing real income, you increase X. So when the good is normal, X double star will be the next B for a price reduction. When you increase price, now you increase the price index here, you're going to reduce real income. If the good is normal, when you are poor, you consume less. So price goes up, reduce real income, you reduce X, and X double star will be smaller than XB. However, if I have an inferior good, it's the opposite. Reducing price increases real income. But if the good is inferior, I'm actually consuming less X, and X double star will be smaller than XB. When I increase price and reduce real income, I'm actually going to buy more X, and X double star will be larger than XB. So let's see an example with an inferior good. Here's my initial budget, X star and Y star. And now let's assume that the price of X increases. If the price of X increases, my Y-intercept doesn't change, but now my X-intercept pivot in all the way here. Why? because if X is more expensive, if I spend all my money in X, I actually can buy less X. So here is my initial X star, and here is my final X double star. Okay, so different from last example, in this case price is going up. How do I isolate the income effect? Again, I am compensate my budget. When price went up, the denominator went up and real income went down. What I have to do is increase the income to compensate, to keep real income compensated or constant. What I'm going to do is to compensate, I increase income from my red budget here to my blue budget here. Notice that income is larger because my budget constraint went to the right. But it's the same price ratio as my new budget because the slope is the same. Notice that I always have to shift my budget constraint parallelly and such as to achieve my previous original level of utility. So that's why I shifted all the way so that I'm tangent to my previous level of utility. Okay. My new bundle is XB. Here it is. What is the substitution effect? The substitution effect is always from X star to XB. It is negative, but that is expected. Remember, the substitution effect is always opposite. Price went up, consumption goes down. Always. Okay? What about the consumption effect? It's from XB to X double star. Well, but that is positive now. So look what happened here. Consumption, because caused by the income effect, increased. How can that be? Well, the price of X went up, reducing real income. But that's an inferior good. When the real income goes down and the good is inferior, I consume more of it. Like when I was in graduate school, I was poorer, so I consumed more Taco Bell. It's the same reasoning here. Price went up, real income went down. Because the good is inferior, I am consuming more of the good. So the income effect is positive from XB to X double star.